So I'm supposed to have 14 people. I see about half of the people logged in so far. I'm staring sideways at the list that I printed off. So was the link easy enough to find to log in for lab? I know that lab logins are usually kind of different than the ones sent out for lecture. I tried to put it in the announcement so that it would be a little bit easier to find.
I think so.
It was in
Cool.
the announcements, but when I went to the pages on the side and I clicked the Zoom invitation link, there was nothing there. So I'm not sure if that's wrong.
So I'm still in the loading process, in part because Dr. McHugh hasn't provided me with the actual schedule that involves the 2-week rotation yet. So I'm kind of waiting on that. That doesn't really have any great bearing on tonight or next week, because tonight's obviously Zoom and next week is a Zoom too. But eventually we'll end up in a 2-week rotation. So I'm trying to hope that everybody kind of gets logged in and we can go through syllabus stuff and some other odds and ends. I know that some of you have me for lecture. Also, I'm hopping locations this week, kind of. You'll see me in 3 different places because I was in my office, which is actually at Hilltop, yesterday, and I'm obviously in the lab today. And tomorrow I have other things to do, and I'm going to be Zooming from my house. So yeah, you get to see lots of different things in the background. I don't have one of those pretty digital overlay things. My I don't know, my graphics card on my computer doesn't really like cope with those things very well. I'm still missing some people. So I'm going to see if I can sort of swivel my my webcam around a little because it's an external. So the lab that we're going to be using is the mirror image one. If you took 111 on this camp on the Norfolk campus last semester, this is the one that is like the next one in the hallway. So it's kind of the mirror universe. It's kind of a little bit of a cluttered mess right at the moment because I think some of the stuff that was used at the very end of last semester, which up until Thanksgiving, didn't get put away. So we're kind of working on that problem too. And we still got a week or two to kind of solve that issue of it. All right, let me talk about syllabus stuff. Like I said, I don't have the schedule yet. So let me talk about syllabus stuff and then I'll tell you what I do know about the schedule. All right, this part has already been loaded to the Canvas shell. If you click on syllabus, this is the one file that you see. Since not all of you have me for lecture, I wanted to make sure you had both my email addresses. So there is the standard one that is the TCC Edu one. However, I will confess, I don't always keep it turned on in the background when I'm at home during the days. So you may or may not get a fast reply if you send me email to the TCC Edu one. The other one, the one that says AR Moeller at Verizon.net, that one I usually tend to leave logged open when I'm at home. So if you're trying to get a fast response, like if it's during the daytime hours, that one is a little bit better bet if you need to like have me get back to you relatively fast because you have a conflict or something like that. So this is why I'm giving you two different email addresses. Both of them are useful. Like I said, just the TCC Edu one is hard for me to keep running in the background of my computer all the time. So I only check it usually once in the morning and kind of once in the early afternoon, and then kind of pay more attention as we get closer to either lecture time or lab time. So that one might be a little bit slower for me to get back to you. This is a hybrid class, which right at the moment means strange things. In a more traditional mode, all of the lab is in person and all of the lecture is either synchronous or asynchronous. Right at the moment in the world of the plague, a hybrid class means that you come to lab physically sometimes. Once we kind of get going into the semester, it'll kind of amount to about every other week. Like I said, I'm waiting on final confirmation from Dr. McHugh, who runs the other two sections of the 112 lab, to sort of figure out if there's an exact way we want to do the rotation. We can't do the labs too seriously out of order because part of it is dependent upon things that we have covered in lecture. So chances are most of you probably took chemistry in the past couple of semesters, probably within the past calendar year, which may also include last spring, which was wild and crazy because the world ended after spring break. If you don't already have this, this is the lab book that we are using. You will notice that it specifically says that it is the Norfolk Campus Edition. If you are campus hopping from another campus and you've taken other classes, either on the beach or Chesapeake or Portsmouth, they do not use the same lab book. There is some overlap in the labs we do, but they have some that are the same and some are different. So this one is specific to our campus. And I forgot to include the thing, the warning about the digital version in this part of my syllabus. It's actually in my lecture syllabus. My recommendation, do not buy a digital version of the lab book. Textbook for the class is free. You know, you can just download it as a PDF, no problem. The problem that we have run into with the lab book, the few people who tried to buy the quote unquote digital version, you can't print anything. Not lab report pages, not pre-labs, not instructions, nothing. And we could never figure out how to solve that particular issue. So you actually need a physical lab book for some of the labs that we are doing this semester. Some of them are going to be given to you via Canvas, but about half the ones that we do this semester actually come out of the latter half of that lab book, because 111 is basically the first half of the lab book. So keep that in mind. Not that it makes any difference right at the moment, but just some reminders. Closed-toed shoes, okay? Sneakers, something that doesn't have holes in it. Yes, I am a Croc wearing person. If you have Crocs, they have to be the food service kind. I'll be really weird and take off my shoe and show it to you. So this is a food service Croc. Okay, note, there's no holes. There's not even holes on the sides. Okay, there's only the only hole is where you put your foot in. That's the only kind, if you're a Croc person, that you are allowed to wear in lab, because it has to be something that does not have holes in it, such that if you spill something, your foot is protected. So weird things, but kind of necessary things for you to know. Safety goggles. Okay, granted, we have a set. We have a set that we, when they get broken, we throw them away, but there's a class set. However, I do notice that, having taught in the fall, because there were no chemistry classes in the summer at all, not for TCC anyway. Most of the people who did 111 in the fall went ahead and bought their own safety goggles. Yeah, you're welcome to use ours. We have sanitizing spray and you can wash them in the sink and all that, but because they're going to go on your face, lots of people just went ahead and bought their own. So my advice is Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon. You can buy a pair of what I would probably refer to as power tool safety goggles for about $5. Like I said, you're welcome to use ours, but because of what's going on right now, you might feel more comfortable using or having your own. When I actually see you face to face, which is probably going to be a couple weeks, there's a safety agreement thing. Basically, you're given a copy and you sign, yes, I received it, that whole print your name, sign your name kind of thing. So all of that is upcoming. Also, when you're here, okay, face masks, show you mine just for grins and giggles. I have one that looks like that. So you can use the disposable kind. You can use the kind that, that are cloth that you can take home and wash. But right at the moment, we're all stuck in the world of masks, which I know is an almighty pain in the butt, because of the fact that they steam up your goggles. You have the mask on, and of course I have reading glasses. So when I have my mask on and my glasses, especially if I'm driving or something like that, or in a store and I'm trying to read something, yeah, they kind of create a foggy mess, and I don't have a good solution to that. I kind of wish I did. So lab is part of your 112 grade. 112 is a 4-credit class. Lab is essentially what amounts to one of the 4 credits. It is 1/4 of your overall grade. And there's 2 separate parts to it that go into the calculation of your lab grade. Now, because we are a community college, one of the things you will notice is that if you have gone to ODU or some of the other colleges in Virginia or elsewhere, you're not going to get 2 different grades. Okay, you're going to get one singular grade from Chem 112, of which most of it is based upon lecture, but 1/4 of it is based upon lab, and they're blended together, calculated wise, weighted average. So especially if you don't have me for lecture, what happens at the end of the semester is I email all the lab grades to Mr. Wheaton and Dr. McHugh. And I don't know if I have anybody in my lab that is taking a lecture from Mr. Seniuk. I think he's lecturing on Saturdays this semester, but I'm not sure about that. One of the weird things of, I'm used to actually seeing my colleagues once a week under more usual circumstances. And right at the moment, like I think last semester, I think I saw Dr. McHugh 3 times the whole semester because he happened to be in the building one of the nights that I was having lab. So that was very odd because I'm really used to, you know, kind of bypassing people and go, have you done this yet? You know, to other people's labs. So that was hard. Pre-labs, some of them are going to be on Canvas. I've loaded the plotting one and the organic one have already been loaded. And I'll kind of show you what this looks like in a little bit here. Also, lab reports in some cases are loaded to Canvas, but about 60% of them do come from your lab book. There is no final exam for lab, only for lecture. If you turn everything in, the end of the semester, I will drop the lowest pre-lab and the lowest lab report grade. That I just kind of like leave alone and just leave everything to record in the grading system while the semester is progressing, and only right before I calculate grades for lab do I invoke the drop a grade function that Canvas allows you to do. Standard 10-point grading scale, which is pretty typical for pretty much all the science classes. Keep in mind that everything is in pairs. Every lab we do has a pre-lab. So you should have an equal number of them, which I think ends up being 12, as I look for my lab book here. Looking at a previous semesters, actually there's 13. So there should be 13 labs and 13 pre-labs during the course of the semester. So you should have 26 total grades. Like I said, there's some of the labs are going to be Zoomed. A couple of them are going to be me putting a recorded video in Canvas so that you can watch it on the alternate week from when you are in lab. So that's going to kind of come and go. I know a few of you I had last semester. So you'll see that there's this kind of, the rotation thing is what we're planning to do. So most of, actually I probably should change this. I know it says most of them are loaded as an MS Word. It should say and PDF because some of them are PDFs. Couple of them you may need the ability to print. The one that comes most to mind is the organic lab, because you need to draw the organic molecules. And unless you have a really super nifty, like stylus capture drawing program on your computer, which most people don't, you're probably going to have to write on a sheet of paper and then take the picture and convert it to PDF so you can submit it. I have limited the file submissions. I know that some people actually had me last semester. I'm trying to do this a little tiny bit different than last semester in terms of, right at the moment, I have Canvas set so that everything can be submitted digitally as your first option. If you would like to hand it to me physically on the alternating weeks when you actually see me, that's fine. But I decided that it was better to have the default be the digital version and have the optional be the hand it to me in person version, as opposed to last semester I did it the opposite way, which caused a lot of really weird messages to be sent by the system. I could never figure out how to unravel that. Because about early November, I changed a lot of the options from turn it in person on paper over to turning it in on digital. And yeah, that caused all sorts of bizarre problems. It sent messages that implied people had things missing that they weren't. So I'm hoping that by doing it in the opposite direction, that maybe I can solve that problem. So you have three options. You have doc, you have docx, you have PDF. I know most cell phones are capable of the, hold it like in line with your paper, take the picture down, and use an app to convert it to a PDF file. Also, obviously, if you have a flatbed scanner, that is also a really amazing way to like lay your paper on there and create it as a scan document so you can attach it to the canvas. Most of the due dates I just sort of default them at midnight, because if you're turning them into me digitally, that's like the default to the system. And actually that should say, not say homework, that should say lab assignments. I did a cut and paste there. I forgot to correct that. I try to put comments on things that are submitted digitally. Canvas is a little hinky about the whole deal. Sometimes it is more cooperative than others about me putting comments in, because usually lab book pages are not the same as like submitting an essay like you would for, say, a history class. So I try to put comments where I can, but sometimes it's a little awkward. No handwritten on notebook paper. Okay. Either make a photocopy. Okay. If you're giving it to me in person. Okay. If you're giving it to me in person, you need a photocopy, or just take it out of your lab book. We're going to use Excel a lot. That actually is the topic of next week's lab, is making sure that everybody has some of the basics on how to graph with Excel. The problem with, okay, if you were just sketching a graph because you just wanted to know what the shape of the curve was, okay, that wouldn't make any difference. That's sort of a mathy thing. But we're usually doing data analysis. You need something that has a grid pattern on it. So Excel is the overwhelming majority of what we're going to be using for the graphing portions of our labs. Just a reminder, if you are turning stuff in to me in person, which is fine. It's like, if it's every other week, and you just want to give it to me physically, that's okay. Our lab books are a little temperamental. You have to tear the pages out kind of carefully. They have this unfortunate tendency to rip in the middle of the page. So just kind of be aware that that's a problem if you're tearing things out of your book. The other thing is, if you're turning stuff into me physically, this is a personal request, because I don't grade pre-labs in the same day usually that I grade lab reports. So like, I'll grade everybody's pre-lab for, say, experiment 14. And then 2 days later, I'll sit down and grade all the lab reports for experiment 14. So pre-labs often are a separate day. It's helpful if you don't staple them together, just because I end up having to, destroy fingernails and pull them apart in order to be able to grade them with any sort of ease. Check Canvas frequently. I know this is the watchword for probably every class that you are taking, just because this is our major way to communicate right at the moment. Pretty much, like I said, we're going to try to do this 2-week rotation that starts actually 2 weeks from now. It might change maybe as the semester progresses. I'm not entirely sure. We don't have we have spring break, but we don't have Thanksgiving as part of this semester, I don't think there's going to be the weirdness that anybody who took 111 last semester, the college passed a ruling that basically said there would be nobody on campus after Thanksgiving. So even though that there was another lab after that, everything was digital. I'll try to keep you in the loop as much as I can. This is all a little bit crazy. Just even though we've had a semester to practice, it's still a little bit crazy. For the labs that are physical, if you do not do them, you cannot turn that lab report in. Obviously, if they're digital labs, you can do them whenever. If you are sick, if you catch the plague, make sure you tell me so that I can make a digital arrangement for a substitute lab, because it'll probably be a different one than the face-to-face lab if you're missing that one. We also have no real lab partners exactly. There's a lot of on your own stuff. There are a couple of labs that will have what we call class data. For instance, the one that comes to mind is the solubility of potassium chloride portion of one of the labs. And each person will be assigned a temperature. And then after you do the trial, you'll put your data on the board and then everybody will end up with all the data. So there is a little bit of data sharing class-wide, but not really the more traditional, you and your lab partner are doing it together and you both end up with the same kind of data sort of thing. Again, this is sort of also a holdover from last semester. And I think, yeah, for some reason my document created a blank page at the bottom of this. Questions? I think I still don't have everybody logged in yet. I see 10 people. And there are 14 on my roll. So I don't know if they didn't find the link or were not aware that there was a Zoom tonight. All right, let me try to talk about the schedule. This is a little bit more problematic. Give me a minute to kind of figure out if I can show you. Oh, actually, maybe that'll work. Show you kind of what my end. No, actually, it's not doing that. Okay. I'm like trying to figure out if I can show you what. No, it's actually not going to let me do that. Okay, let's try this again. Give me a minute. I'm trying to figure out how to show you the way the interface looks for the modules. All right. Share. Okay, I think that works. I did not create a landing page, which I'm sure that the woman that I had to take this training class from last fall would be utterly horrified, but I find the landing page concept really annoying. And actually, a lot of my people from last semester said that they also agreed, because when you logged in, you couldn't tell that you had logged in because it looked exactly the same as the opening page. So yeah, that was frustrating. So I left my lab stuff this way. So syllabus, when you click on it, You should be able to download the thing we just talked about. This is the lab syllabus. Schedule hopefully will appear soon. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. I tend to do announcements fairly frequently to try to make sure everybody gets, kind of reminded that, oh, this is a Zoom one, this is a real one, especially when we're doing them all at the same time. The modules part, okay, some of it I have loaded, okay? So next week, we are Zooming again because everybody's Zooming. And it will be the plotting lab. You can see here that there is a pre-lab loaded, and I'm going to provide some additional instructions over the next couple of days. But the lab, the pre-lab itself is loaded, just not the instruction part, although it's not, it's just graph this data. That's really all it says. The plotting lab, I think I loaded that one too. Yes, okay. So I loaded that one, and that one's called the graphing exercise. The other two files that are there are extra information, which we'll end up talking about more in depth next week. And this is all to give people kind of a little bit more comfort level for graphing things on Excel. The following week, the one that's listed here as organic molecules, this one will probably also be likely to be a Zoom lab. I will put up an announcement sometime in the next week once I find out for sure, but it's probably going to be a Zoomed one. Now, the first one, probably, again, I'm kind of hedging my bets here, of the semester that is here in the lab is called absorption spectroscopy. Let me figure out where it is in your lab book. Because I want to show you what it looks like. All right, so this is on page 181. This is the beginning part. This is one that we created as a department. It has a couple of pages of data. It has some instructions on how to use the Spec 20s. And then it's going to have a couple of pages here that are actually most of your lab report. This is where about 60% of your data goes. On the back of the page, there's some additional data that goes there. There's a few post-lab questions down at the bottom. The pre-lab for that particular lab is going to be back on Canvas. The pre-lab is not in the lab book, even though the lab report is. So right at the moment, I have 14 people registered for lab. So unless this goes up or down in the next week or so, I will just sort of divvy my lab in half, and 7 people will be designated A group and 7 people will be designated B group. And so half of you will do absorption spectroscopy first, and I think the other half will be doing a different lab. I'm not sure which one yet. It might be the solutions one here that's listed further down the page. And then we'll start this 2-week rotation. Like I said, I wish I had more information about the exact rotation to give you, but it is apparently under perusal and consideration by some of the other people who would teach these labs also. So absorption spectroscopy, vapor pressure of water, solutions, molar mass of a solid, rate law and activation energy, of which the activation energy is actually not something, that's what it's called in your lab book, although we're not doing the activation energy part. Equilibrium constant, equilibrium exercises and Le Chatelier's, pH and experiment 18 preview, potentiometric, molar solubility, and thermodynamics of borax. So those are all of the ones that we are doing this semester. The only one that kind of doesn't follow the everything is paired idea is the one here that says pH and experiment 18 preview. We're gonna talk about pH and we're gonna do some of the experiment 18 preview probably as a Zoom or probably as a video. So that's the only one that, again, they're still all paired, but that one actually has a particular week that's sort of devoted to that topic. All right, let me scroll back in the other direction. All right, pages. I wish I could make them not be alphabetical. I wish I could make them be like order of importance or most recent one on the top. I have never figured out if there's a way to actually alter that. So I'm kind of stuck with the alphabetical mode. This one, once we're done tonight and tomorrow, I get to download it from the cloud, and I usually translate my stuff over to YouTube links and then upload them with a link, because the cloud thing run by Canvas is really problematic. So doing the loading across to YouTube, even though it's time consuming and it usually takes a couple of days for it to all go like through all the process, is still better than the cloud thing that Canvas seems to provide. Math review. All right. Sometime between now and next week, download this. This is not being collected. This is trying to make sure that you are kind of in the right groove for the types of math that are going to occur this semester. So let me stop and share this in a slightly different way. All right, this is what the math review looks like. However, I will also say that I'm going to give you slightly different instructions. This is actually designed by Dr. McHugh. And I did something really strange to, oh, now I know what I did. I touched my power cord. Hang on a minute. There. The power cord to my external webcam is really temperamental. All right, let's try this again. All right. I'm going to give you slightly different instructions. This was actually designed by Dr. McHugh, and I really like it. I just don't like the instruction at the top. My suggestion is definitely use your calculator. Make sure that you are using your calculator in the optimal way possible, which generally means if you own a TI, don't use the caret key. The caret key is not actually designed for exponents in terms of powers of 10. It is only designed for things like squareds and cubes and that sort of thing. Lots of people tend to use it in the wrong method and end up with decimal place errors in their answers. So this is why I'm giving you sort of a warning about this. So reviewing sig figs, use the rules, okay? Use the rules that were in your lab book and in your textbook and first semester. Apply them to what's listed here, especially part 1 and part 2 there. How many sig figs are in those items? How many sig figs are in those 4 A through D for those straightforward math operations? Then we begin to get into power of 10 exponents and log base 10 and natural logs. So this is a little bit new and different compared to first semester. We are, especially after the first couple of chapters, going to make relatively frequent use of both log base 10s and natural logs. So make sure that you are using your calculator correctly when you are doing these type of calculations. As you sort of progress downward here, actually, I don't care about the show method part because for one thing, you're not going to be turning this into me. The way the logs work is it's supposed to be like exponents where if you have the log of 15, you should be able to add your log answers. I'm okay if you just want to push the button on your calculator, just to make sure that you're doing logs correctly on the calculator. The bottom half of this page, some other miscellaneous, okay? Logs and anti-logs, both log base 10 and natural logs. And I will give you a tip about the very last problem on the page here. If you use or assume you have 1 full liter, 1,000 milliliters as your sample, it'll make the math for the rest of it a little more straightforward. All right. So between now and next week, try to get a lab book. Not that we're going to use it next week, but try to work on getting it if you haven't gotten it already. You may actually physically have to go to the MacArthur Mall bookstore to get the lab book. Do the lab, do the math review. Next week, I will give you all the answers. I'll also post an answer key. I just want to give you a week to work on it. Let's see. I see somebody asked me about when we need the manual by. I'm thinking. This is the 13th. So next week is the plotting lab, which is an upload to Canvas. That's the 20th. The 27th is the organic lab that's also uploaded to Canvas. So you kind of have to have your lab book, I think, by the 3rd of February. So you've got about 3 weeks. I don't know how, I know that last fall, there were ordering ordering errors. Of course, the plague, the COVID has made everything just so much more complicated. So yeah, you've got about 3 weeks, but I would say start working in that direction of maybe call MacArthur Malls, Barnes and Noble and go, do you have this in stock before I drive over there kind of thing. I don't know if they'll mail it to you. I don't know if they have contactless pickup. I'm not really sure about that end of it. But you have a few weeks to work on it. So you have from now basically until the 3rd of February. I'm trying to think what else I needed to say. So do the math review. If you are familiar with Excel, next week should be really straightforward. If you are not very familiar with Excel, you might want to try to read up a little bit. I mean, there's the handouts that I loaded already, but you might want to Google it. If you are not familiar with how to use Excel, I'm going to kind of walk you through how to use stuff. I see that somebody said that they had it shipped, should their manual shipped to the Virginia Beach campus. Okay, I guess that works too. Like I said, I'm not, Not really sure what the optimal method is right at the moment, as we all try to both not tear our hair out and also be fairly safe too. So life is just really kind of complicated. So questions, otherwise, people I have for lecture, I will see you tomorrow night. Okay, people who have somebody else for lecture, we will Zoom next week. We will be doing the plotting lab, which is all about how to use Excel. Questions? I will, since I had a couple people who didn't show up, like I said, tomorrow I will be able to download the recording from the cloud, and then sometimes YouTube is temperamental with big files, so it usually takes 6 to 8 hours sometimes for it to upload. I will eventually post a link for this once I get it crunched. It'll be before next week, but it may take me a couple of days to get that done. Otherwise, some of you I will see tomorrow, and some of you I will see next week.